Every story starts with a blank page. This one has the title and my name at the top, and I don't know much more about this story than that. I've given it some thought, but I really honestly have no idea how this story is going to finish. And so this is what pantsing a short story looks like. So let me tell you a story. All right. The day the empty box was delivered to Andy Melvin's doorstep, he was already a suspicious person. Maybe others were suspicious of him, but whether that was true or not, he suspected everyone and everything, from the heads of the deep state on down to his own neighbors, family, and the few friends he still had left. Andy grew more and more reclusive with time and had started ordering everything online to avoid leaving his house or interacting with people more than was absolutely necessary. He wasn't crazy. Not before that delivery day, at least. Andy himself would tell you he wasn't crazy. He was cautious. Well, let's make that the same paragraph, I think. He was cautious. He did not believe 9/11 was an inside job. He believed in the moon landing. Okay, I think that's 2 words. He believed in the moon landing. Let's see. He didn't like most election results and never met a politician. Well, you wouldn't have met him. Never saw a politician he didn't distrust. But he believed the winner really won each time. He had his suspicions about the death of Kennedy, but if he were ever pressed on it, he would say Oswald was the most likely shooter. Okay. For Andy, it all came down to, I'm going to misspell this, Occam's razor. I'll check the spelling on that later, so those of you who know how it's spelled don't freak out on me. Okay, I see two spellings. Maybe it's the A. Occam's razor. All right. The most likely... No, that's not how it goes. The simplest explanation was the most likely. So, the problem with conspiracy theories, in his opinion, before that box was delivered, at least, was that they weighed down with their own complexity. Complexity required competence. Complexity required competence, and most disasters in life were greatly tied to incompetence. Other people were stupid and mean, but mostly just stupid. Alright. Then that effing box arrived. It felt light. It was a medium sized package, which eliminated most of his usual deliveries. He had reached a point where he couldn't guess what was in any one box that arrived, because he ordered so much stuff. Now, it was like he was always giving himself presents, but his bank accounts suffered for the ease of impulse buying. Still, most of what he had delivered were groceries, household products, and then smaller packages that usually ranged from books to spare parts. Book mail, I think it's going to have to be two words. I know it's a common phrase now, especially among writers and readers. Book mail was easy to spot because it usually came in bubble packaged envelopes. Small things came in small boxes unless they were packaged together. He ordered stuff individually and so quickly at the online behemoths. Okay, let's see if I can spell that right with the computer's help. The online behemoths couldn't sort it out in time, so everything usually came in single small boxes. The groceries and supplies required big boxes. So what the hell was up with this medium-sized box? I know I need to hyphenate that. Medium-sized box that was as light as the cardboard it was made from, and that was as light as the cardboard it was made from, and made no noise when it was shaken. The label was damaged. He ran his thumb over the familiar white rectangular sticker shape, and it felt smooth as always, but large portions had been faded or rubbed white. Ghosts of words and lines showed through a little, but not enough. Okay, showed through a little, but not enough to decipher. His address and full name were there. Hey, hello Jay, sorry I wasn't here from the start of the stream. Was working on my own short. You're rubbing off on me. Well, that's good stuff, man. You don't got to be here from the start. You can jump in anytime you want. I'm just happy to hear you're right, and I'm looking forward to Friday, man. I got that written down for Friday, right? Yes. Looking forward to talking to you on Friday. Me and the Right Idea are gonna have a conversation about short stories that he's gonna record for his YouTube channel, which I very much enjoy, and I'm excited about that. Got it on my calendar, man. So that we're gonna have a good conversation. All right, I'm glad you're excited too, man. This is gonna be fun. It's good to talk shop, and it'll be a fun interview. All right, his address and full name were there. His full name, including his middle name and not just the initial. Alright. And Armand Rosamilia is here. Very cool. I'll find your channel and follow you if you're not already. If Dave doesn't mind, I'll put the link in the chat. Go ahead. The Right Idea. I think I have it set where you can put links in there. I'd considered at one point blocking links, but I didn't. I don't think so. Yeah, go ahead and put the link in there. I believe it's The Right Idea all the way across. So you're one of those smart people that use the same name everywhere. If I'm remembering right. My YouTube channel has a different name. My Twitter has a different name. So I've messed up social media all the way through there. Yeah, the link came up. That's good. Armand Rosamilia and I sat down. We sit down all the time because we're writing together and things. But he and I sat down to go over OBS Studio software. So I have a video on my YouTube channel where I cut out all the parts that made either one of us look bad. But We sat down and explained to him how the software works. And Armand himself will admit that learning new technology isn't his favorite thing to do. But it was a fun conversation, and it's I've had people watch that video and think it was kind of fun because you have people all the time who are on there telling you how to do things, but it was actually a video of me teaching him and him asking questions and stuff. So it was kind of fun to get those questions in. As soon as my wife learns that I will be on Twitch too. His wife is a wonderful person and helps him manage his very successful career in various ways, usually technology related. Technology is hard; it baffles me. But he does a fine job. He does. Armand has a Patreon page that recently he started doing Q&A on, where people will send him questions because he has lots of fans, and he'll answer those questions on video, and those show up on his Patreon. So he's doing all right with technology. He's coming along there. We all kind of learn it as we go. I'm glad both of you guys are here. It's cool to have you guys on board. All right, so we're back to this guy's box. Again, anybody, anytime, make any comments you want. It's fine. I don't mind taking short or long breaks as we move through here. His full name, including his middle name, not just the initial, were on the label. That was weird. He never used his middle name, so either it was someone no takes these back. You're stuck with being a friend with the right idea. So so either it was someone who knew him well or not at all. There were lines and lines of special instructions. Andy hardly ever saw that on deliveries. All right, you can call me Billy. It's much shorter. That's good. I knew I'd picked up that your name was Billy from some of your videos, but I was like, when we were getting ready to do the interview on Friday, I was thinking, should I, when I get into that interview, should I call him Billy or should I call him the right idea? I think I'll call you Billy. All right. Andy hardly ever saw that on deliveries anymore. All right. The first said to only deliver let's say the first instruction. The first instruction said to only deliver the package on this specific Thursday. I don't know if I gave a day of the week before, but I'm going to keep it Thursday now. This specific Thursday between 3 p.m. and 8:45 p.m. That was weird. Not because it was random, but because it wasn't. He had interviews until 2:30 that day, and the last one was just shy of 30 minutes from home. All right. What's this story about? All right. All I have is the title, Fear of an Empty Box. So there's a guy named Andy Melvin who gets delivered an empty box. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen beyond that. I got a few ideas, but I'm kind of trying to create horror around something that seems kind of innocuous. but trying to sort of create fear in this character with something that might just seem simple. All right, at his house, he was going out to eat with a couple work friends at 9, but needed to leave 15 minutes before that. Andy was not going to make that dinner date. All right. The next instruction was mostly faded, but he was able to read that it said not to knock. The instruction after that began with, if you see him. The rest was lost. Let me pull that up a little bit. You like the sound of that? That's good. Let's see if I can deliver on it. Sometimes if I don't know where a story is going, I surprise myself and do really well. And sometimes when I don't know where a story's going, it is not that great in the first draft. So let's see what we can do with this one. All right. The rest was lost in the smear of white. Even the bar code scan was gone. There was a return address. All right, I'll spell address right. That's the least I can do as a professional writer. All right, there was a return address, but only the vaguest shapes of letters and numbers remained, and he could make out none of them. Andy stared at that label for a full minute, and then finally took up his scissors. He struggled to cut the tape on both ends and rip open the rest down the middle. He still had to cut 2 more times. After all this time of opening boxes on a near daily basis, he still didn't have a good system for getting them open quickly. As he finally tore the big flaps free, he folded it open on a completely empty interior. There wasn't even any packing materials. Just the assembled box with the damaged label and the air inside. He tilted it into the light. He actually felt inside to be sure that he wasn't missing something small. He folded it closed to reread the surviving portions of the label. He opened it again. "What the hell?" he whispered. Andy carried the box over to the corner beside his front door, where he eventually would collapse and recycle it. That's what he thought would happen anyway. He paused after a couple steps, and his throat... No, we don't want to do that. He paused after a couple steps and closed his fists tight. I didn't want to put anything in there that implied that he was actually having a physical reaction, so that it didn't look like they'd actually sent anything dangerous to him, but this is what he's going to think is happening. He paused after a couple steps and closed his fist tight. What if it was a biological attack? Again, he was nobody, and there were no odds that made that idea remotely likely. Still, an empty box from an unknown address. Hadn't he read about that sort of thing during the early days of the War on Terror? Okay, I see some comments there I missed for. I'm working on a short story collection for my fantasy world at the minute, lulling to out roughly 10 together, and I have 2 done, 2 in the world. That's excellent, man. That's really cool. I'm a big fan of fantasy. I write a little bit of it. I've read a lot more of it, and I was reading fantasy before I was writing horror. That's a cool way to work as an author when you're working some of those short stories and then putting them together into something. So that's that's an interesting thing. I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out for you. All right, Days of the War on Terror. Those all came with letters, he told himself. Andy wasn't positive that was true, but he thought it was right. If someone were sending him, of all people, a biological agent, they would want him to handle it. It would come with a product and maybe a letter. An empty box, especially an empty cardboard box, an empty box, especially, okay, let me fix that. An empty cardboard box was an ineffective way to send a biological agent. Alright, hitting some typos here. My fingers are getting fat on me or something. Alright, send a biological agent. He was sure of it. Still, was his throat getting tight? Was he sweaty? Did he feel faint? He thought he was feeling all those things, but he was also freaking out. He went to his computer. He fought the temptation to look up symptoms of anthrax or West Nile virus. Instead, he opened his recent orders. They had just screwed something up and mailed the box without his order in it. He found he had a few orders pending, but nothing on the way. Still, that had to be the most likely explanation. Andy glanced in the direction of the empty box. When he looked back at his computer, 15 minutes had passed. Was that a symptom of some kind of poisoning? It was probably a symptom of freaking out. Andy looked up stories about, let's say searched. Andy searched for any stories of strange deliveries of empty boxes. He found one story of a family that, okay, let me make this a new paragraph because I'm going to do two examples here. All right. He found one story of a family that complained one Lego figure was missing from a playset they had bought. That one figure arrived in a tiny Ziploc bag inside a huge box full of packing material. They took pictures, and it was just a funny, ridiculous story. Andy shook his head. That was not his situation. That cute story was explained by someone being an ass or incompetent. Competence. Okay. Or everyday incompetence. Okay. He found another story about scams and leaned forward to read this. Someone had gotten multiple deliveries of random items from China. Stuff they hadn't ordered. It turned out this scam was used to write fake reviews of the item from a confirmed purchase. Nothing really hurt the people getting the odd deliveries. There were several stories like this, but nothing about empty boxes. He searched several other word combinations, but came up empty. He started to type signs of let's make this quotations. Signs of biological attack into the browser, but then forced himself to get up and walk away. Andy found himself standing over the empty box. The empty box. The light cast down inside just right to show the crisp, clean insides. There wasn't even any dust or bits of cardboard from imperfections in the box or from the warehouse. Even with the familiar label, he had no idea where this package was really delivered from. He tilted his head to try to see the label again, but didn't want to touch the box. Andy sat down and turned on the TV, but wasn't watching. He was watching the box, but not the flashing lights and story going on in front of him. Who sent you? Andy realized he had turned off the TV before asking the question. He realized he turned off the TV before asking the question. Like he wanted the box to be able to hear him more clearly. Hear me more clearly, he whispered. Andy dropped his remote on the floor and rushed to the box, nearly sliding on his knees in front of it. He ripped the thing apart at its glued seams. The tape on the bottom gave him the most trouble, but he fought it free without going for the scissors. With the box collapsed, he felt along every edge and surface. He gave himself 2 nasty paper cuts on the crisp cardboard, but found nothing. What was he looking for? Listening devices, he whispered, and regretted speaking aloud. Talking to yourself was what crazy people did after being alone too long. He wasn't crazy. He tried to remind himself. Now, looking for listening devices in the seams of a cardboard box probably was a little crazy. He picked up the box then and decided to recycle it now. His friends would just have to go on without him for dinner. He was peripheral to the group anyway. I'll be in and out of stream, by the way, Jay. A bit busy this evening. No problem, man. I appreciate you being here. He was peripheral to the group anyway. Fingerprints, he said to himself. He wasn't sure why it mattered, but he took a wet paper towel. Alright, is paper towel 2 words? Maybe so. He took a wet paper towel and wiped down every surface of the box. Okay, Andy prepared to take it down to recycle again, but then he thought about the label. His full name and address were on the label. How many boxes had he recycled and given out that information to anyone who might find them? He used, okay, let's do a new paragraph here. He used the edge of his scissors to scrape away every bit of his identification. Why hadn't he been doing this all along? Okay. This was probably how some weirdo found him and sent him the empty box to mess with him. Hell, the way that label was damaged. The guy might have made it himself and dropped it at Andy's physical address. Andy moved his hand away from the knob. If some guy found his address and came here specifically to mess with him, he might still be out there. Andy looked through the peephole, but saw no one. Someone who went to these lengths wouldn't stand where Andy could see him. There is no way that is what's happening here. But he didn't believe his own words, no matter how much sense they made. Maybe he delivered the empty box to lure me out when I tried to recycle it. That was insane, but in that moment, he had those words had the frightening edge of truth to them. He added, he checked that the door was locked, and applied the chain as well. The collapsed box had streaks of blood stain on them. The collapsed box had streaks of blood stain on it from his paper cuts. If he didn't want fingerprints on the cardboard. Okay, let me spell fingerprints correctly. If he didn't want fingerprints on the cardboard, he certainly didn't want his DNA. He dropped the cardboard by the front door and backed away. It was still in the house with him. What if that's exactly what they want? He shook his head and returned to the couch. He felt around and between the cushions, but couldn't Find his remote. I can't stay in here forever, he told himself. But it had to be wise to stay put for a while. After something weird happened, it was good operational strategy to batten down, stay together, and not venture out right away. He wasn't sure where he heard that. Probably some apocalyptic. Okay, let's spell this right. Apocalyptic show he had watched. But he wasn't together. He was alone. He thought about which friends he knew well enough to invite over in a circumstance like this. He found the short list was depressingly short. What would he say? What would he say if there was someone? I wanted you here because someone delivered an empty box, and I think they might be trying to murder me. And he shook his head at himself. Out loud, he said, I thought someone might be waiting outside my house, so I wanted you to come over so they could get you first. He actually laughed at that. He'd just stay in tonight and things would be fine in the morning, or a day or two after that. Why would morning or the day after tomorrow be any better? Maybe he didn't want to be here at all. I can't stay in here forever. But was that true? He stayed in here most of the time. Most of his work could be done online. He already ordered everything online anyway. If someone was trying to lure him out, as crazy as that sounded, they could freeze to death and starve before they got him. But that means I'd have to open more boxes. Andy felt cold all over, even though he was sweating profusely. He bent over between... Okay, this needs to be the same paragraph. He bent over between his knees. He bent over between his knees and fought off the urge to throw up. That brought him back to the idea that there was some invisible agent in the box already killing him. As he started to finally calm down again, he remembered the label had the exact times he would be home. Someone knew all that. He fixated on the last partial line of instruction. If you see him, what were they going to do if they saw him? The next bit happened so fast. All right, let me fix this here. I think we're in the home stretch. I'm about to wrap this up for better or for worse. The next bit happened so fast, he barely had time to react. Footsteps outside. A sharp pounding knock on the door. Footsteps retreating. That's what he wants you to think. It sounded crazy in Andy's own ears, but he couldn't stop himself from saying it or believing it. Okay, good stuff. Finally he stood. His bladder felt loose, but he managed not to wet himself for now. Through the peephole, he fully expected. Okay, let me save what I got so far. I've been writing a long time. I don't want to lose it. Through the peephole, he fully expected. Through the peephole, he fully expected to see a leering, eyeless face filling up the view. He caught a glimpse of a man in a uniform climbing back into his truck. The vehicle wavered on its shocks. Then it drove away. Andy forced himself not to say that's what he wants you to think. But he thought it. He couldn't stop himself from thinking it. Okay. Just a moment here. All right. He moved to one of the side windows, still expecting that leering monster face to be waiting before it crashed through the glass to take him. Still no monster, but that didn't mean there wasn't one. As he pressed his cheek to the cool glass, he saw the small package left on, I'll say left in front of his door. It had a white label with black letters, numbers, and lines he couldn't read from the window. Andy Melvin folded to the floor and curled into a ball, wishing he was dead. Okay.